and Bertie. Bella is the female. She overlooks the waterfront for the safety turn of all the sailors. On the other end, you've got Bertie.
Yeah.
Right
What did we do today?
To make sure
We went on a ship trip, yeah?
Yeah.
It was exciting.
Yeah.
We felt cold, yeah, also.
Routes. Directly ahead of us, you've got Jurgen's Bar. You hold on to your City Explorer bus ticket when you go in Jurgen's Bar. You'll get 20% off the cost of your first round of drinks. We've got lots of information about the Cunard shipping lines. They're all engraved into the benches on the front there. So the top, the back, the sides, the ends, fully engraved with lots of information about the Cunard shipping lines. Unveiled by the captain of the QE2, who's a woman. She's called Inga Klein-Olsen. She brought her little boat round here in 26. We're going to head to the cruise terminal. To the left of us, you've got the Liver buildings, designed by Walter Aubrey Thomas, and he also designed the Tower buildings opposite. But the Tower buildings opposite was one of the most expensive buildings to build in its day. It's fronted in Royal Dalton tiles. Every single tile on that building on the right is a Royal Dalton tile, which means when it rains, that building cleans itself. It's a self-cleaning building. It's just like flushing the toilet when it rains. That building. So designed by the same guy, Walter Aubrey Thomas, designed both of those buildings. So you've got 16 different companies inside the Liver buildings. Everton Football Club are on the 7th floor, as I said, and Princess Foods. There's 16 different companies, they're just offices inside that building. And then coming up on our left-hand side, you've got a monument with a gold flame sticking out the top. That's dedicated to all the engineers that have died on ships. It was originally just for the Titanic, but the monument's been changed to reflect any engineers that have died on ships. So that's this gold flamed monument to the left there. As we swing round into the cruise terminal, we are getting a state-of-the-art cruise terminal that's being built. We're going to be able to take 2 ships in at once. At the moment we can only take 1. But we have got 120 already booked in for this year, so good for the local economy. 120 cruise ships already booked in. If you look at the weather vane at the top, it's a 22-carat gold-plated galleon given to us by a friendly pirate in the 1600s. So it's known as the Sailors' Church. Been a church on this site for 750 years. On the 11th of February 1810, the spire collapsed on the church and it fell into the nave below, killed 25 little girls from an orphanage. They were just going in for Sunday service and the whole spire collapsed and fell in. So it's known as the Sailors' Church. You've got the tallest restaurant in Liverpool, that's the Panoramic 34. It's on the 34th floor of Beetham West Tower. So to the left, you've got offices in the middle known as the Sandcastle. Directly ahead of us, you've got the Mercure Hotel, formerly the Atlantic Tower. That's where Michael Jackson stayed before he did a gig over here. He had the top 2 floors, one was for him, one was for the monkey. And then just behind there, there's a greenish glass building that's called 20, and that's where Liverpool Football Club have got all their admin staff on floors 8, 9 and 10. So Everton Football Club are in the Liver buildings, Liverpool Football Club are in that greenish glass building there. You get a closer look at Tower buildings to the left of us. So these are all Royal Dalton tiles on this building. And then you've also got a really nice restaurant on the left of us. It's called Oh Me, Oh Mine. That's what people say when they get the bill. There's a rooftop terrace called Goodness Gracious Me, same thing. And then coming up on the left of us, you've got a red and white striped building, and that was formerly the head office for the White Star shipping line. So that's where the Titanic was registered. It never came to Liverpool, built in Belfast, sailed from Southampton, but registered in this red and white striped building to the left. It's also where they announced the sinking of the ship. And that was from those little black balconies just above the first floor. They were too scared to come down and face people, because the first thing they did was stop the sailors' pay. There was no longer a ship, so nobody needed any money. They locked themselves in and just leaned out of those black balconies and shouted down. 400 people on this corner, waiting to find out news about loved ones. They just shouted out the windows, eventually throwing down lists of names. Remember the musicians that stayed on the ship to keep the passengers calm? They did so in real life. 6 months later, they sent their families the bill for the uniform and the instruments. They said it was willful neglect that they chose to stay on a ship that was sinking and ruin perfectly good uniforms and instruments. So they sent their families the bill. You got the Liverpool pub on the left. That's the only pub in Liverpool with a husband crash. So ladies, pop in there, drop your husband in the crash and go shopping. There are care packages available. They will mind your husband for up to 4 hours for you in the crash. And then coming up on the right, you've got a statue of Queen Victoria. That's where Liverpool's castle once stood. She's known in Liverpool as King Victoria, not Queen Victoria. It's a sceptre in her hand. Looks great from the front, not so good from the side. So she's known in Liverpool as King Victoria for that reason.
Yeah.
So bus stop number 3, if anybody wants Matthew Street, the Cavern Club. So this is your bus stop coming up on the left. On Street, if you look over to the right and look up, you'll see the Hard Day's Night Hotel. You can see the statues of the Beatles just above the first floor, all dressed in their different outfits for what they went on to do after the Beatles, and so the statues are called together again. And then straight after the Hard Day's Night, you've got Matthew Street, and that's where you'll find the Cavern Club. And that's where the Beatles played 292 times in less than 2 years. But they didn't drink in the Cavern Club. The Cavern Club didn't sell alcohol. They didn't have a license for over 10 years. So they were drinking all the other bars in Matthew Street. Heading into Victoria Street, this is one of the oldest streets in Liverpool. Originally we were only made up of 7 streets in total. This is one of them. So this is where you would have found the fruit exchange, you would have found the post office and the Bank of Liverpool. So some of the oldest buildings in Liverpool are in this area. So this whitish coloured building that's coming up on the right, that was just the post office. It got redesigned by the Luftwaffe during the Second World War. They managed to knock the top floor off for us. Said it was a little bit too tall to be the post office, and knocked the top floor off. And then coming up on the left hand side, it was once the Bank of Liverpool. That's where we used to print our own money. Some people still do, but that's a different bus tour. Those little pigeons were a temporary art feature they call the uninvited guests. The hotel have worked out that the real pigeons won't land on the window ledges while they're there, so they've hijacked the art feature. Keep the real pigeons off the window ledges. So as we red brick building, that's known as the Shankly Hotel. It's full of Liverpool Football Club memorabilia. You don't have to be a guest, you can just go in, take all your photographs and come out again. And then on the left hand side is the Dixie Dean themed hotel. So it's an Everton themed hotel right opposite the Shankly. So it's EFC versus LFC on both sides of the road.
Yes.
Come on.
Brilliant.
Well, hey!
Yeah.
Where'd you get that? So cool.
Brilliant.
So we're now coming up to the cultural quarter of the city. As we get to this roundabout, if you look to the left, you'll see the opening for the Mersey Tunnel. Longest underwater tunnel in the world for many years. It's still the widest, 2.1 miles long, opened in 1934 for the people of Liverpool to walk through. 10,000 people walked through this tunnel. About a week later, some of them wrote to the Echo, which is our local newspaper, and said they were disappointed there was no portholes and they couldn't see the fish. We've got the World Museum, 5 different floors, including a planetarium and an aquarium, and everything in between. You've got Egyptians, you've got dinosaurs, you've even got baby octopuses as well. All free to go in. Coming up to bus stop number 4, you've got Central Library in the middle. The most expensive book in the Liverpool Library is a study of American birds, and it's worth £4.3 million. It's a 3-foot tall hand-painted book of American birds, surprisingly. There's also a hidden message written in the footpath of the library. All you have to do is add up all the red letters that are on this footpath. You spell out a real Harry Potter style message. Once you've worked out what it says, if you go in the library and ask, they'll tell you where you can find the answer. So it's a real little riddle in this footpath. It reads from this end up to the doors. You've got the Picton reading rooms next door. That's all still part of the library. And then finally at the top on the left, you've got the Walker Art Gallery. Statues of Raphael, Michelangelo either side of the front door. Sitting on top is the Spirit of Liverpool. She's sitting on a huge bale of cotton. On his column right at the back is the Duke of Wellington. He's looking out towards his most famous battle, which is Waterloo. As we head down William Brown Street, on the left of us you've got St John's Gardens. This is the original site for the Anglican Cathedral, but they decided that the site was far too small and took the Anglican Cathedral further up the hill. It's now Memorial Gardens, but it was formerly a cemetery. 27,000 bodies were buried in a mass grave to the left of us. Not all of them were dug up, by the way, exhumed when they changed it to Memorial Gardens. So if you're going for a picnic, don't take the dog. You got the Hillsborough Monument on the table to the left. It looks a little bit like a drum. So that's the Hillsborough Monument. And then coming up on our left, you've got St George's Hall, designed by Harvey Lonsdale Elms and opened in 1854. It's got a full working courtroom, it's got prison cells underneath. It's got a huge banqueting hall with a tiled Minton floor, which is 140 foot long, 72 foot wide, and it's made up of 30,000 Minton tiles. It's Prince Charles's favourite neoclassical building, and Queen Victoria said it was worthy of ancient Athens. This is also where they filmed Harry Potter, Magical Beasts, Where to Find Them, Peaky Blinders Series 3 when he goes to court, all filmed in there. And it's also Gotham City Hall in the new Batman movie that's just come out in March. So you'll see the mayor of Gotham standing on them steps. You've got statues of Queen Victoria, Prince Albert on horseback, and on the steps in the middle there is Benjamin Disraeli. Coming up on the right of us, you've got the Empire Theatre. We've got 7 theatres in Liverpool. This is where Queen first performed Bohemian Rhapsody to a live audience in 1975, and it's also where the Beatles played 13 times. The last time the Beatles played there was the 5th of December 1965. So we're currently on a detour, and that's because of the roadworks in front of Lime Street Station. So we're currently on a small detour to get back onto the route. We have to go right round the block of Lime Street Station. the left you'll see some of the Georgian houses. Lots of these are now student accommodation. We've got 60,000 students in Liverpool, spread between the three main universities, so there's 60,000 students across the city. Normally find them in their natural habitat, which is the pub.
Or asleep.
Or asleep, yeah. Don't normally see them in daylight. Station is going to come up on our right hand side. It was the world's first commercial passenger railway system, and it ran from Liverpool to Manchester. And it started in 1836. You will just see the station over to the right there. You can see the platforms and the trains just over the top. And then coming up on the left of us is the oldest hotel in Liverpool. Sadly not the finest, but it is the oldest. There's been a hotel on this site since 1826, that's the third one. And that one was built in 1914. And then directly ahead of us, you've got our naked statue. It's called Liverpool Resurgence. We asked a guy called Jacob Epstein to give us a statue showing Liverpool coming out of the ashes of the Second World War and stepping out into the future. Liverpool was heavily bombed during the Second World War, and so the artist wanted to show when we came out of the Second World War, we had absolutely nothing left, which is why this statue doesn't have any clothes on. He's representative of Liverpool as a city with nothing, but still stepping out into the future. When he was first put up there, however, he was right at the front of the prow of the ship. But when it rained, the rain used to fall off a certain part of his anatomy. And in the winter months, little icicles would form and they'd snap off and it unsuspecting passers-by. So they've had to change the angle of the dangle. Known in Liverpool as Dickie Lewis, he's a famous meeting spot. So when anybody met anybody, I'll see you under Dickie Lewis, everybody met in the same place. He's Okay, so we're now heading up to the Catholic Cathedral of Christ the King, which is coming up at the top of this hill on the right hand side. It was meant to be the largest cathedral in the world, and it was designed by a guy called Edwin Lutyens, who started by building the crypt. Then the Second World War came, so he had to stop building. You can see a scale model of what this cathedral should have looked like. It's in the museum in Liverpool at bus stop number 2. It's called the Cathedral That Never Was. You'll see the top of the cathedral once we've gone past the Phil Redmond building on the right.
No, because it's moving to FG6.
Known in Liverpool as Paddy's Wigwam, the Pope's Launching Pad or the Mersey Funnel, any one of them three will do. Nobody calls it the Catholic Cathedral of Christ the King. It's just too long. You see the crypt of the cathedral, it comes right up to the edge of the road again, heavily influenced by the Egyptians, all because of Tutankhamun's tomb being opened. It suddenly became very fashionable to have anything to do with Egypt in your design or in your home. Hence the pyramids on the crypt. That's the only part you pay to go in. The rest of it is free. You just pay to go in the crypt. And then coming over on the left, you've got Britain's first red brick university. So if you ever heard the term, my child goes to a red brick university, this is Britain's first one. Designed by Alfred Waterhouse, unveiled by Queen Victoria. She wasn't very impressed. She said it looks a little bit like an abattoir. So the poor guy was forever known as Waterhouse Slaughterhouse for the rest of his days because of Queen Victoria. After the Second World War, they went back to Edwin Lutyens and said, listen, we can't justify building the largest cathedral in the world. Plus, we haven't got enough money left in the pot to complete your design. Could you possibly make your design a little bit smaller? Edwin Lutyens said no. So the top of the cathedral was designed by Sir Frederick Gibbard, and it was completed between 1963 and 1967. So technically this is older than the Anglican. They started the Anglican in 1904 and they didn't finish it till 1978. The top's meant to represent the crown of thorns on Jesus' head, or the 12 apostles, and there's over 22,000 pieces of stained glass in that top lantern. The bell tower had to be put outside the cathedral because the vibration of the bells would have broken the glass. They're named after the four apostles, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, but in Liverpool we call them John, Paul, George and Ringo. This was originally Liverpool's largest workhouse. On this site, the Catholic diocese bought the site off the workhouse. When they bought the site, they promised the workhouse they'd use the workhouse bell. So the big bell on the end is actually the workhouse bell. That's the one we call Ringo because he's slightly out of tune than the other three. There's a big crack in that bell, that's why it's out of tune. So now heading into Hope Street, you've got the Everyman Theatre on our left. It's where Willie Russell, Alan Bleasdale, Julie Walters, Pete Postlethwaite first performed and put on their plays. Won a design award in 2013. We're coming up to the Philharmonic Dining Rooms. You've got the bus stop on the left, and the Philharmonic Dining Rooms is coming up on the right. It's a Grade 1 listed pub. Gents' toilets have been Grade 1 for about 15 years. Ladies' toilets are bog standard. Gents' toilets are pink Connemara marble, worth over £1 million. You can go in, ladies. They do let ladies into the gents. You just go and speak to the bar staff. The bar staff will go in and check that there's no men in there, and you are allowed in to take photographs of the urinals. What a thrill. Bar staff will also give you a peg for your nose. It stinks. It's a fully functioning gents' toilets.
No Dickie Lewis.
It's funny.
You've got the Liverpool Philharmonic Orchestra on the left. Third oldest orchestra in the world, 177 years old. Just inside the doors was a plaque commemorating the musicians that died on the Titanic because they were commissioned from the Liverpool film. And then coming up on the left, you've got Faulkner Street. Films such as Batman, Sherlock Holmes, Peaky Blinders, Ripper Street, Hover's Advert, House Through Time, all filmed in Faulkner Street on our left. Over on the right, you've got a case study by John King. Again on the right, there's a building with 4 sandstone columns. That was the old school that George Harrison, Paul McCartney went to. Paul McCartney came back to the city and put £1 million into that school. So it's now LIPA, the Liverpool Institute of Performing Arts. On the right again, this used to be the art school, and it's where John Lennon met his first wife, Cynthia Powell. She was a student in the art school. He had his first place just through these black gates with Stuart Sutcliffe. John Lennon once said the worst thing about being famous is you can't go to the Phil anymore for a quiet pint.
That's true.
So you've got St James's Cemetery coming up on our left.
That is
57,000 bodies buried in St James's, built on the site of an old quarry. And then you've got the 6th largest cathedral in the world. It's got the highest peal of bells, the highest Gothic arch, the largest single stained glass window. It's also got one of the heaviest bells in the world at the top, known as Great George. Designed by a 22-year-old called Giles Gilbert Scott, who's also responsible for designing the red telephone box. So if you go inside the cathedral, his smallest design is inside his largest design. There is a red telephone box inside the cathedral. Back again. It's supposed to be a Roman staff with a heraldic eagle at the top. We call it a chick.
That stick costs 60,000
That's
pounds.
exactly what it is. You'll all sleep tonight now you've seen that.
Yeah.
Okay? Highlight of your toe, right in the middle, the grass.
I'm going to be back tonight.
It looks like a snooker cue or a prop for your washing line to keep your washing up. With the birds about that big.
60,000.
60,000
But
pounds.
it's a sign of something or what?
It's just an art feature. Just a complete waste of 60,000 pounds. Okay, so we're all going straight down to the Chinese Arch. We can't get to the Bondoc Church at the moment because of the roadworks in Rodney Street. So running off to the right of the bus at these lights on the left is Chinatown. We've got the oldest Chinese community in Europe, and that's because of the shipping links, the maritime links. We are twinned with Shanghai, and so the people of Shanghai donated the largest Chinese arch outside of mainland China. It's coming up on our right, it'll be on our left at the moment.
Get off, get
Donated in the year 2000, which is the year of the dragon. There are 200 dragons on the arch, 188 are said to be male and 12 pregnant females, which is said to bring prosperity, good fortune, good luck and good health. They sent it over to the city flat packed. They sent their own builders and their own engineers over to put the arch together. They said if the Scousers build it, there'd be 3 screws and 2 dragons left over. So they wanted to build it themselves. So we let them. Go on, yeah, come on, do that. So yeah, the sign above it, I can read Chinese. It says mind your head. It says Chinese city. This is what you call too long without a day off. Okay, so now we're going to head into the Baltic Quarter, the Baltic Triangle. If you look to the left, you'll see the tower and the Anglican. That's the only part you pay to go up. It's 2 lifts and 108 steps. So don't be fooled by the 2 lifts. Won't get you to the top. 2 lifts and 108 of those curly steps. On a clear day, you can see Blackpool Tower from the top, which is 64 miles away. You can also see Iceland. Not the country, the Schottenberg. Coming up on the right of us, you've got the wedding house. It's the old North and South Wales Bank. Before that, it was an old sea merchant's house. You've got a big mural on the side of a secretary bird by John Culshaw. It's supposed to look a little bit like a liver bird. It's just to the right of the bus there.
This is a wedding house.
You can see her head.
Coming up to Keynes' brewery on the left, it was started by an Irishman called Robert Kane. Came over from Ireland to escape the Irish potato famine. When he came over to Liverpool, he didn't have a penny to his name, absolutely skint. He must have been really nice looking. He ended up marrying the mayor's daughter, and that was the wedding present of the father-in-law. Most people get a toast rack. He got a brewery. Ended up in over 200 different pubs. As I said, a lot of different pubs inside this building here, lots of watering holes.
What's your place?
As we head into Jamaica Street, you've got the skateboard park on the right of us. And you've also got the botanical gardens on the right. If you're wearing a Fitbit and you've done your 10,000 steps, you get a free cocktail in the botanical gardens. And then coming up on the left of us, you've got a statue of Bob Marley. That's like the 4th plinth in Trafalgar Square. It's only been there about 3 months. Just on the left there.
Oh, yeah.
And then coming up on the right, you've got the liver bird wings. It's a really nice photo opportunity. You just jump between these 2 wings, get your photograph taken, turn yourself into a little live bird. Camilla Parker Bowles jumped out of her car and had her photo taken there. So if it's good enough for Camilla, it's good enough for us. So we're going to head back towards the Royal Albert Dock, where we'll come to the end of the tour when we get back into the docks. So between the 60 different docks that we had along that 7-mile stretch, we had dockers and sailors from across the world. We had lots of Scandinavians and Norwegians. They deemed it necessary to have their own place of worship. So coming up on the left of us is the Gustav Adolf Krike, which is a Scandinavian church just to the left, still used to this day like a community centre. And the Norwegian sailors brought a dish over to Liverpool, and it was called labskaus. We kind of ate this stuff by the bucket load. So the Norwegian sailors would point at us and say, "You're beginning to look like the dish." So that's why we're called scousers. We're named after the Norwegian dish, labskaus. It's still a traditional dish in Norway. So if you go to Norway tomorrow, ask for labskaus, stoleskaus, which is a lamb stew. A lot of people cheat and use beef. It's a little bit cheaper. So that's why we're called scousers. Blind scouse. So coming up on our right is the final monument, and that's called the Great Escape. It's symbolic of the ending of the slave trade. The horse is actually made out of rope, and behind the horse is a slave standing on its tail. So it's like the ending of the slave trade. It's called the Great Escape. And then directly ahead of us, you've got the Royal Albert Dock, designed by a guy called Jesse Hartley. He was actually from Pontefract in Yorkshire, opened in 1846. Mainly built of cast iron, red brick, stone and granite. There was no wood originally used in the Royal Albert Dock, and that was because the main import in 1846 would have been cotton in its raw state. Before it went to the mills in Manchester, Leeds, etc., the raw cotton would have been stored here. It's now home to shops, bars, restaurants, hotels and apartments. On this side of the dock you've got the Maritime Museum and the Tate Modern. On this side, got two really good exhibitions on. One's all about the Titanic and the other exhibition is the International Slavery Museum, the only one of its kind, all in the Maritime Museum. On the other side, you have got the Beatles exhibition, which is a private exhibition. It's about £18 to go in. It takes you about an hour and a half to go around. And then as we get onto this bridge, if you look over to the right of us, the bottom left-hand corner, you'll see 3 concrete columns. That's where we used to film this morning with Richard and Judy before his shoplifting days. That's also where the public toilets are, right at the bottom there. So if you need the loo when you get off the bus, go right to the bottom of the dock there. That's where the public toilets are. We're coming up to the end of the tour, so if you're leaving us here, please leave us a little review on Facebook. If you've enjoyed your tour today, my name's been Viv, and your driver downstairs has been Scotty. We really do appreciate your comments, so if you've enjoyed your tour, please leave us a comment. If you didn't enjoy your tour, my name's Ethel. And there's a little tip box by Ethel downstairs, but enjoy the rest of your day and enjoy the rest of your stay.
Thank you ever so much.
You're welcome.
That's fantastic. You having who?